Well, thank you, Mira, for the lovely introduction, and we're very excited about this. So, welcome to our talk about web component architecture and patterns. But Sherry, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for coming here. And we're so excited to be here. And thanks, Mira, for a nice introduction. I'm founder of Sherry's Berries, and on my free time, I'm working as a web developer at Nordea Bank in Copenhagen. How about you, Anna?
Yeah, so I'm founder of Anna's Bananas, and in my free time, I'm also a front-end developer, but for CodeStrand.
Yes.
So today we're going to start by talking about separation of concerns.
Then we will move on to components.
Then we're going to build web components.
And a few weeks ago, we published a survey, and we are going to share the result with you.
And then we're going to talk about the best way of creating a web component. So let's dive in, because there's a lot to talk about.
Yes.
Sherry.
Yes. So first, we are going to talk about separation of concern. Separation of concerns are just basically a set of principles which let you to split down your application into distinct sections. And each of these sections, they are actually addressing some sort of concern. But Anna, can you tell us that why even we need to do that?
Well, if I make an online shop for Anna's Bananas, I need to make sure that it's scalable, because I'm not sure how profitable it's going to be just to sell bananas, right? I also need to make sure that it's maintainable and reliable, because I have my own physical shop, so I'm not going to have a lot of time to spend on this. And also, I need to make sure that my code is reusable, because I don't want to copy and paste all the time. But Sherry, I think you have a better example of this.
Yeah, of course. If you look at this beautiful picture of my shop, you can see that I just put all my strawberries carefully in boxes in one section, my blueberries in boxes in another section. If tomorrow I'm going to introduce a new product, which of course is going to be raspberries, I'm going to put them in section, and I put them in boxes in one section. You can see that I already have a reusable solution, and my solution is also scalable. And if there is something wrong with my blueberries one day, I can easily fix it in that section without touching raspberries or any strawberries. So you can see that my solution is also reliable and maintainable. So you can say that at Sherry's Berries, we are taking the separation of concerns seriously.
Well, just like Martin Fowler said, if you're afraid to change something, it is clearly poorly designed. And at Sherry's Berries, they're not afraid of change because they have toffee apples.
True.
So let's take this to the native world a moment. In the native world, when we think about separation of concerns, we think about MV star. When I say MV star, I'm referring to model view controller, model view presenter, and so on. There is a problem with these, is that they tend to get out of hand really quickly. That is why there's so many MVC, MVP, and so on, because they're trying to address this issue. Another problem is we try to take this like a religion. So even if we have a button, we'll put the title in the model, and this really is not necessary. But enough about the native world. Sherry, why don't you tell us about the web platform?
Yeah, of course. On web, we have our own way of separation of concern. You know, we always had the CSS, JavaScript, and HTML. But if you want to map whatever that we have on the web to what we have in the native world in a traditional model view controller, what is going to be our model? Is it going to be the label of the button, or is it going to be the data that we get from the backend? Well, the fact is that web is flexible. In our web, our model, more or less, is going to be both the data that we get from backend and also the label for the button, because we should be able to generate our view based on our model. And our controller is going to be JavaScript plus the data binding that we have, and also all the events that we have, for example, on click, on blur. And our view is going to be the HTML we have, plus all the CSS for the styling. And one thing that you should keep in mind, that the CSS today is pretty powerful. And lots of those transitions and all of those animation that we create, it can be done purely in CSS. But the conclusion is, the web is flexible. It comes with some sort of default, but it doesn't force us to do everything in one way. And at the same time, it is not Wild Wild West. So web is flexible, and it's great. We love it, but it is not all rosy. I'm pretty sure many of you have been in the situation that you created an element, you were so proud of it, until somebody committed something into global CSS, and your element is not going to work the same. It's not nice, we've been there. And the other thing is you just look at this beautiful div soup that we have here. I don't know about you, but to me it is not clear to see that what is there, where is my element, where they started, when it ended. So this is not nice. So Anna, is there any other way it can help us to have more separation of concern?
Yeah, in 2013, Facebook with React created the component-based architecture. Since then, as you probably already know, many frameworks like Angular and Vue have adapted this. Component-based architecture is a way of dividing our UI into smaller parts, and these parts, we call them components. Now, a component is like a widget, so it can be a side nav, it can be a menu, it can be a card. But let's take a look at Sherry's online shop to have a better understanding of this. As you can see, we've drawn many rectangles on this UI. And this is just one way of dividing it into components. And the whole application itself is a component. If we have a look at the orange rectangle, that would be the parent component, which we might call, for example, product list. And inside that parent component, we'll have a turquoise rectangle, which would be our product. The good thing about components is that they allow us to encapsulate it. That's still not perfect encapsulation, but yeah, we can also, if we want to, make them more responsive or whatever we need to. Now that we know what a component is, Sherry, do you think there's anything missing from this?
Yes. The thing is that I have a dream. I would like to have an actual encapsulation because I know there are ways, for example, some naming convention like BIM that is going to help us to prevent the CSS leaks, but I would like to have a real style encapsulation. Yeah. What else, Anna?
Once we have this style encapsulation, it would be really great if we could access the component and style it.
The other thing is that I know that today we can create components in Angular or Vue, and we can actually see that in the dev tool that where a component starts and ends. But I would like to, I mean, there are frameworks, maybe they don't do it. I want to have one way that it can fix everything.
Yeah, talking about frameworks, like, it would be great if you could send me your code from your Sherry's online shop, and then I could reuse it and style it however I needed. But we can't because Sherry did it in Angular, and for the sake of this talk, I'm going to do it in Vue. And they're just not compatible, so that's not cool.
Yeah. The other thing is that I know that we already can create a small components, but I would like to be able to load it faster because, you know, today, all of the solution, more or less, we need to actually use them in mobile. And then it is, I want it to be faster because it matters when we are in the mobile.
Yeah, and then it would be great to have everything in one place, like JSX, to allow flexibility. So, Sherry, can you make our dream come true?
Yeah, wait a moment. Ta-da, of course, it's web components. It's literally the answer to all of the problem that we have. So let's see that what they are. So they are components, but they're built in a way that they give us that encapsulation that we were waiting for, and they are, of course, reusable. And since they are platform agnostic, I can finally share all of those components that I created for my Sherry's shop, so you can use it in your shop as well. But the thing is that if you're using a framework, not all the frameworks they are supporting web components. Rob Dodson from Polymer team, he has a project called Custom Elements Everywhere. You can go and check to see that the framework that you are using today, if it supports the web components or not. So, Anna, can we dive a little bit deeper in web components?
Sure. So web components consist of three main technologies: HTML template, custom element, and show DOM. Previously, HTML imports was an important factor, but because of ES6 modules and soon-to-be HTML modules, we don't have to worry about this. When we use these three technologies together, we create a versatile element that allows us to encapsulate it and use it in the code without worrying about collision. So What is a HTML template? A HTML template isn't anything new. It's been around for a while. It's literally a HTML tag called template, and we use it in our HTML. We can then access it through the JavaScript by cloning it, and this way the browser will only parse it once, and that will gain a lot of speed. But I think it's time to see some code. So do you think you can do that for us?
Yes, I will do it. We are going to create this very basic page together. As you can see that there are only few texts, and then there are these two fantastic strawberry cards that we have here. So we are going to see that how we can just use the template to create it. So this is the way that we use the HTML template. Just like any other element, it starts and it ends. And whatever that we put there is not going to be loaded unless we are going to ask the JavaScript to load it. And this is the place that we are going to put it inside the DOM when we are ready to add it there. And this is the way that we are going to do that. First, we are going to have a reference to our template. Then we are going to just add all the information for the image there. And then we are going to add the description that we want to put there. And all magic happens here. So as you can see that, just easily get clone our template. And then we just add that clone version of our template, we append it to our DOM. So the good thing about it is that you have one template, you can clone it as many times as you want. Even though if you do it 100 times, the browser is only going to parse it one time. So because of that, you already gain a lot of performance. So I actually, when I heard about it, I really became excited about it. So this is our result. You can see that we achieved what we wanted to achieve, but the thing is that I'm not so happy about this div soup here. And how can we fix it?
With custom elements. So custom elements, or as you may hear me say during this talk, custom elephants, are a way of creating a HTML tag, or extend an existing one, or improve an existing one. When we create a HTML tag, we need to be careful of naming, because we might name it red button because we think it's a good idea, but there's probably already 100 red buttons, so be careful with that. It is true that the Polymer team is currently working on this so that we won't have to worry about naming in the future, but for now, we still have to think about it. Also, we need to think about attributes. So when we have the image HTML tag, we all know that src means source. So when we're calling our attributes on our elements, we should really think about how we're going to name them so that the end user can understand what he or she is meant to do with that. Also, custom elements are extended from HTML element, and that provides us with several methods. We've created this table so that you can understand how these methods work relating to frameworks that you might be familiar with. But anyhow, we're going to see how this works now in the code.
Yes. So we are going to create bb-red strawberries. And this component is going to have the image and also a description. So as Anna mentioned, that they are just basically JavaScript modules that they inherited from HTML element. Therefore, they have already a constructor. And since they are submodules, so we need to call super since it's implicit. And once we have our class, this is just, so basically we can just say that, OK, this is our class, and this is the attribute that we want to map it to. So in our case, it's going to be that bb-red strawberry. And connected callback is one of the methods that Anna mentioned, and it's going to be called as soon as your element is appended to the DOM. So that is the best place to have a reference to our template, and then call our own render function. And this is our render. So what we did is we just say that, OK, this is our image, this is our description, and ta-da, everything works. But since we have attribute, we should make sure that we react to any changes, because if we just pass a strawberry, the strawberry picture, and maybe later suddenly we want to pass a blueberry. I mean, it can happen. So we should be ready to react to that. If you're familiar with Angular, so you can say that this is just like ng on change. And this is what we achieve. You can see that it is better already. So we can say that, yeah, we have our red strawberry here, and it finished there. So this is very nice. But our cat is not happy, because if we have a P in our global CSS, we just simply say that color red. See what happens? Because we already had one P tag here and one P tag here, so everything is red. And this is not what we like, Anna. So how we can improve it?
Shadow DOM. So Shadow DOM allows us to encapsulate our web component, and that way we don't have any styling or behavioral leakages in or out. It also provides us with some really cool features, such as slot. So what slot allows us to do is, in our template, create a placeholder, and then we give it a name. We're going to see all this in the code in a minute. We give it a name, and then in the actual custom element, we can have a div or a p tag or a h1, whatever we need, call the slot, give it the class, whatever we want to, and then put whatever content we need to. Another thing we have is the host pseudo class. The host pseudo class allows us to reduce this div soup. So we don't actually have to wrap our component in a div. We just have this host pseudo class, which wraps it nicely for us, and we can style it. Another cool feature is CSS custom property, CSS custom property, which allows us to access the web component from outside. So in our actual template, we give it a value. We call it dash dash, very important. And then in our style attribute of the custom element, we call dash dash background color, and we can change the background color from there. But let's see how this actually works in the code.
Yes. As you can see, that the only thing that we added is that inside our constructor, we define that we have the shadow DOM, and then we cloned our template, and this time, instead of appending it directly to the DOM, we are just going to append it to our shadow root. So that's already with this 2 lines of code, we already gain our own style encapsulation. And this is a slot that Anna was talking about. This is our template. So you can see that we defined 2 slots here, and we can have as many as we want anywhere in our template. But we should remember that they have name. In our case, one of them has title, and the other one is description. Let's see how we can use it. In our own main HTML, we can just say that, OK, this is the div that we have the title, and just whatever that inside here is going to be appended there. So you can see that here is a very basic example, but inside that slot, we can even call another web component. And this is so flexible. And the other thing is the style. The CSS custom property that Anna was mentioned. Even though that we have that encapsulation, but still we have a way of theming, which you can say that, you can see that dash dash background color. So the background color is going to react even though it is encapsulated. And Polymer team already is working on some more features for theming. That part is going to be improved, even though that it is still pretty cool like this. And the other thing is that the host that Anna was mentioned that. So you can see that all of this styling here is going to be added to this. So in this way, we can eliminate one of that divs, which is really good. And this is what we achieved. So you can see that our code is cleaner. We have our slots. We have the shadow root and everything. So everything is good. Everybody is happy. Even our cat is happy, just like a boss. So you can see that if we are just doing the same, color red, ta-da. So this is red, and this is white. So we achieved it. So it was pretty cool, Anna. Thank you.
So now that we know about web components, do they rock? Well, in my personal opinion, I think they're awesome because they allow maximum interoperability. At first, I was a bit skeptical because of tooling, but now there are many frameworks, especially my favorite, which is Angular, that allows you to create web components. So What do you think, Sherry?
Yeah, I also absolutely think that they do rock. I want to mention that there are a lot of companies that they already adopting web components, so there are a lot of good stories out there. One of my favorite one is Ionic, that they migrated everything to web component with a stencil, and today everybody, even though that they are not using Angular, they still can use Ionic, which is really good. And the other thing is that I work at bank. We are so famous for having legacy inside legacy inside legacy, because our application is enterprise. But there are banks like ING that they already adopted that web component, not only for UI, but they are deploying the feature in web components, which is really good. It's a big improvement for all of these enterprise applications. And so what we want you to do is that go ahead and then find out about all of these good stories, success stories. Because no matter how big or small is your application or the size of your company, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of things that you can achieve.
Yeah, so is the browser ready? That's always a big question, isn't it? So yes, it's stable. Firefox is releasing everything we need very soon. Edge will always be a bit edgy. But the good thing is that we have excellent polyfills. So even for older browsers, we don't really need to worry. This is no longer an excuse, OK? But, Sherry, what does the future look like?
So bright. So you remember that Anna was wishing to have something like JSX? It is already there. There was a proposal by Apple, and it backed by Google, and as a result of that, Polymer team came up with a fantastic idea of Lit HTML, which is a very small library, it's only 3K, and it allows you to do everything that you can do in JSX, and they have a fantastic change detection, which works even better than JSX. And the good thing is that in future, it's going to be also supported by browsers. So that's really good. And if you're interested, we are not going to talk about that. If you're interested, that this is the URL to the talk by the Justin Fignani from Polymer team, which is going to tell you that what it is. And we heard of it. We were so excited. So we decided to apply it to our own scenario. So you can see that it's very basic. We just only imported render and HTML, and everything is the same. And inside our connected callback, this time we are using this render function instead of our own render function. And our render function changed in a way that now it's only returning a string, which is going to be our HTML, and this is our template right now. So you can see that we could be able to use all of these if condition here in order to load or not load something. But this is a very basic example. Lit HTML is very powerful, and it also has a lot of other directives that you can use it. And yeah, we achieved it. We achieved the same thing. And then we could actually ship less code to our client, which is fantastic. And also we could use, because of the change detection, how the change detection works there, we could also load it faster, which is great.
Yeah, so now that we know that web components rock, me and Sherry's opinion, just two people's opinion, and the web component community is massive, so we actually asked developers how they see web components. And to do this, we made a survey. We encourage you, if you know about web components, to fill out this survey, because we would like to write an article about it. And yeah, we'll pass the slides later.
Yes. And this is a picture of a few people that they actually answered our survey, and they didn't mind it to be mentioned in this talk. But we would like to thank everybody who participated in this survey.
Yeah, so the first question we asked them was, what are they using to create web components? And Stencil is the winner. This is probably because of Ionic, but also if you take a look at the assets downloaded by the browser, you can see that Stencil is in third place. We still haven't had time to play around with Polymer 3, but as soon as we do, we will update this slide.
The other thing that we asked them that if they are following any best practices, surprisingly, majority of them, they say nope. And the other big group, they say that, yeah, we will just put down, we will make sure that our component accept attribute and then events up, which is good, but it is not enough. Because when you create web component, you are going to have a customer, and the customers are the developers that they are using that. So there are a lot of things that you should keep in mind, because your web component should be flexible and customizable. So there are a few people, they mentioned gold standards, but there are more standards that we have some references into our talk as well. So go ahead and read them.
Yeah, we also asked them just to see if they thought that it would be possible to make a web app with just web components. And it's good to see that a lot of people think so. We have seen many success stories. I would also like to add Google Earth and YouTube to those success stories. And yeah, there's really no excuse, especially with the browser. The only thing that it depends on is you and your team. So, yeah.
So we asked about the singleton pattern. And the reason that, for example, people like us that we come from Angular background, we always had services and singleton. And if you want to create a web component without, especially if you want to choose to not use any framework to create it, you might think that it might be very difficult to apply all of those things. And that was also our friend Lars. He works a lot with the hardware connectivity. And when you are working with the hardware connectivity, it is so important to make sure that you talk to the same instance of your component. And then he has an example here that it shows that how easy it is to create it. So go ahead and read it.
Then we asked what they're taking into account when creating a web component. The first 4 options were given, and then they could add anything else that they thought was necessary. It's great to see that they're thinking about reusability, simplicity, separation of concerns. However, accessibility is lacking, and this is a problem. This is a problem because accessibility is very important. If you think about accessibility, you tend to think about the permanent disabilities, right? So it is true that 8% of the web users do use screen readers, and we need to think about that. But there's also temporary and situational disabilities which we have all the time, like holding a baby, being in a noisy office, breaking an arm. Accessibility is really important, so please take it into account.
Yes, and we ask about composition or inheritance. And majority of people, they said that composition or both. Of course, it depends on the situation. But if you go for composition, you automatically gain more cleaner code, and also your code is going to be flexible. But if you need to go for inheritance, you should, especially if you want to inherit it from a native element, you should be able to support all of this API that it has. I know this is a very extreme example that input has all of this type, but your end user, the developers, they might use it. So your code should be totally ready for all of that. So think twice if you go for inheritance.
So, Sherry, what's the best way to create a web component?
It depends.
It depends. So not one solution fits all, always the answer in this world, I think. But our really good friend, Kenneth, he actually gave us some really good advice. And he said that we should always have some goals in mind. So our code should be easy to understand, easy to refactor, should be testable, and reusable if that makes sense. Because sometimes we just might need to create a web component for our backend. And then that might not make so much sense to make it reusable. But if you're putting it out there, it might be worthwhile.
Yes. And we would like to thank our friend Kenneth that he really inspired us to create this talk, and also everybody else who helped us and who supported us.
Yeah, and we want to just give a quick shout out to Amanda, who's over there,
yes,
because she just became a GDE in Actions on Google, and we're really excited for her. Yes. So congratulations, Amanda.
Congratulations, Amanda. And we would like to thank you all that you listened to us.
Yeah. And you can follow us on Twitter or find us at the party later.
Yeah, we can talk. Yeah, thank you.